You know the best part about playing a budget deck? Not being able to afford really powerful spells. You know the best part about playing in a table with other people? Using their powerful spells. What's up, everybody? It is good to be back home and no longer traveling, covering protests and parades and everything else. If you want to know what all went on there, then please check out my other channel. For now, though, I want to talk about Kefka. And this deck that I'm going to be showing you is basically the end result of having a conversation with a friend of mine at the card shop who said, "It's a shame that Kefka costs so much mana. I wish that he could make a good commander deck." And, well, this basically became a personal challenge for myself after hearing that. So let's get into it. Kefka Dancing Mad is a Rakdos commander that costs 7 whole mana to get out. During your turn, he's indestructible, and at the beginning of your end step, you exile a card at random from every opponent's graveyard, and then cast all of them if they are castable without spending any mana. And, yeah, this is just kind of one of my favorite types of cards in Magic the Gathering of all time. I love being able to play one card and just get 3 extra pieces of paper out of it. It's amazing. So the strategy we're going to be going with is going to be a bit of a combination of things. One, we're going to be leaning very heavily into the mechanics of Kefka. It makes sense. It's what he's here for. It's why we play Commander. But I also kind of want to lean into an idea of chaos. So if you've ever played Final Fantasy VI, one of the big things about Kefka is that, yes, he is a very, very good schemer, but one of the reasons that he's so good at doing his plans is because he's basically just chaotic as hell. It is very hard to predict what he's gonna do, who he's gonna kill. The answer is probably everybody, especially if he's got a lake he can poison or a river he can poison. But there is one scene in that game that sticks out to me, and it's when you have him captured and he's basically staring at you from a toilet and just starts bouncing around the room like a madman, and then hunkers back down on the toilet. And it's a very weird scene, especially for a game made entirely of two-dimensional sprites. But because of that, I want to try to just kind of cut that divide between Kefka as a mechanical ArchEnemy powerhouse and Kefka as just a guy who has no idea what the hell's going on, but it's all going to go his way by the time we're done. So let's talk about that chaos factor first. This is going to be how we are going to elicit a bunch of chaos in our games. This is going to be by using the Cascade mechanic. And of course, you can use the Discover mechanic here as well if you want. So the way this works is when you cast a spell with Cascade, you exile cards from the top of your library until you hit a non-land card that costs less mana than the card that you just cast. So if I cast Boarding Party, I'm going to Cascade till I hit a card like, say, Volcanic Torrent that costs less than the Boarding Party. This is to add that bit of flavorful unpredictability that Kefka's supposed to have in the story into our deck itself, and it also benefits us really well because ArchEnemy decks always suffer from having fewer resources than the opponents. After all, we begin the game with 7 cards, and our opponents begin the game with 21 cards, so we have to eke out advantages as we can. Boarding Party and cards like this are a great way to do that. It's got haste and Cascade, so it goes and gets you a new card. Volcanic Torrent has Cascade and then deals X damage to every creature and planeswalker our opponents control, where X is the number of spells we've cast this turn. Maelstrom Colossus has Cascade and costs a ton of mana. Throes of Chaos has Cascade and Retrace, so it's going to come back whenever we need it to. Into the Time Vertex has Cascade and also Rebound, so it'll come back the turn after we've cast it. Aura Phoenix has Cascade, and it comes back to our hand anytime we cast a card with Cascade, if it's in our graveyard. Reign of Riches gives any spell we cast a turn, as long as it's the first spell, and we cast it by using some treasure. Cascade. And then we have Itali Primal Storm, which will yank out cards from our opponent's libraries and then cast them for free. But because we are playing an ArchEnemy deck, we do need to have a plan, and that plan needs to be depleting our opponents of their resources. And of course, depleting them of their resources is going to do nothing but help us in the end, because if our opponents are losing cardboard, it goes into their graveyard, and those cards become castable by us. This will also create the very fun dynamic for us of making our opponents choose which pieces of cardboard go to their graveyard, so that they have to figure, hey, if I get rid of this now, my opponent's going to get it later. So, let's talk about that real quick with our group discard section. Fanatic of the Harrowing makes everybody discard a card, and then we draw a card. Skull Wren deals 2 damage to every opponent, and then makes each of them discard 2 cards at random. Burglar Rat and Virus Beetle make our opponents discard a card when they come out. Scythe Spectre makes each opponent discard a card, and then has a burn effect attached to it. Creeping Dread makes people discard a card at the beginning of our upkeep. Necrogoyf does the same, and it also has a big, powerful claw to bash people with based on the amount of cards that are in graveyards, as it is a Goyf. Then we have Bad Deal. We get to draw 2 cards, then to make every opponent discard 2 cards, and then make them all lose 2 life. Junjin Midnight Sky can reanimate things from our grave, or make our opponents discard cards whenever it dies. And then Painful Quandary says that whenever an opponent casts a spell, they either lose 5 life, or they discard a card. And of course, making them discard those cards is going to be compounded, because not only is our commander going to be taking their cards away, we're going to be using Sepulchral Primordial to take their cards away and throw them onto our board immediately as well. Let's also punish our opponents for trying to cast spells against us by adding in a Karavek the Merciless, so that we have a handful of lieutenants that we can search for when we get to the end game. That way our opponents will not be able to just slowly outvalue us over time. We want them to have a ticking time bomb that is beating them down and cutting their morale. And that does it for the core strategy of the deck. We want to make sure that our opponents are losing resources, and we want them to not be able to know what comes next out of our deck as we whip random things out of not only their graveyards, but our own deck. A bit of a divide between mechanical density and thematic flair. That said, let's go ahead and talk about draw power, because we do need to have resources to beat our opponents. Now, we do have to run fewer draw spells than I would like, but hopefully that Cascade that's in the deck will give us a little bit more leeway when it comes to card advantage. But for the draw we do have, let's run Moira Scavenger. It's got Death Touch and Haste, and it allows us to discard cards to draw cards so that we can dig through our deck at a decent click. It also has Death Touch, so that means it's a great blocker. Then we have Stolen Strategy, which will allow us to yank cards from the top of our opponent's libraries to cast. Collector's Vault, which will allow us to discard cards and draw cards and make treasure tokens, which will give us what we need to cast our commander even when we're behind. And in a similar vein, Seize the Spoils, Big Score, and Inspired Tinkering also grant us a lot of cards while also giving us tons of treasures, which is exactly what we want. Then let's run Siphon Mind to make all of our opponents discard a card and let us draw a card. Read the Bone so that we can scry 2 and draw 2, and we would be using the Surveil version of this if we had a reanimation package, but for now the scry will work just fine. Finally, Triple Triad allows us to steal cards from our opponents as well as get free cast from the top of our library, which is a fantastic mechanic to lean into given what our deck is trying to do. And that does it for all of our draw power. Between this and the Cascade, we should be able to manage, but we do still need to stop our opponents from winning the game. So let's talk about our control package. Now, at first glance, only 10 pieces of removal and interaction may seem like it's not a whole lot. And you're right, it's not, but trust me, we'll get to that here in just a second. But let's start with what we do have. Bituminous Blast has Cascade and the ability to deal 4 damage to a creature, perfect for what our deck is trying to accomplish. Gives us both that control and the chaos. Dusk Mangler makes all of our opponents lose lots of cards and lose 4 life. A Braid can get rid of artifacts or creatures. Feed the Swarm can get rid of enchantments or creatures. A Curse Marauder, Playcrafter, and Gaius von Belzar can make all of our opponents sacrifice creatures. Rankle, Master of Pranks, can make them do the same while also allowing us to draw cards and forcing our opponents to discard cards. and Eldest Reborn can make everybody sack creatures and discard card, and it can also revive a creature from our opponent's graveyard, which is exactly what our deck wants to do. We're also going to run an Anzarag's Rampage to blow up all artifacts we don't control and then freely get a creature from the top of our deck. Cards like this are fantastic in ArchEnemy decks because we have to be punching not at one person, but at all people all the time. Speaking of that, I want to go ahead and point out that cards like Gaius Van Belzar are fantastic new additions because Gaius has the ability to get rid of enchantments, which is becoming increasingly more common in the color black. However, the real spice is the fact that our deck is going to be running not 2, not 3, but 8 board wipes because of this little clause on Kefka. The dude is indestructible, and given that he's indestructible, we're gonna be able to utilize that to our advantage. We can play Nipton Lottery and make our opponents lose a bunch of cards and then just not lose our commander. We can use Necromantic Selection in order to make sure that our opponents lose a bunch of creatures, we revive one of their commanders, and still keep our commander. These are very nutty effects to lean into, I'm not gonna lie. Let's also have Nevin Rawl's Disc, because one of the best things you can do as a villain is the villainous monologue, and being able to effectively go, "Behold, my Nevin Rawl's Disc! What I'm going to do with this is annihilate everything you love, unless you stop me." Ooh, like, you get to do that shit, right? And that's fantastic. That's leaning very heavy into what the character is trying to do. Chain Reaction blows up everything, Blood Money blows up everything and then gives us treasures, Deathbringer Regent blows up everything but then gives us a 5/6, which our commander gets to stick on the board, so we get 2 creatures out of this. Decree of Pain blows up everything and then allows you to draw cards based on what you blew up, and then Let the Galaxy Burn is another card with Cascade and the ability to burn a whole bunch of things to the ground. This effectively gives us 18 pieces of removal, many of them punching well above their weight by killing multiple cards and even stealing multiple cards from our opponents as we go. This should allow us to play a very, very powerful set of ArchEnemy games with this deck, even if our opponents are playing more expensive cards and punching well above their own weight classes with their deck. This should allow us to catch up to them just fine. That said, let's talk about mana. So, we do have one problem in this deck, and that is that our commander costs so goddamn much. So, we're gonna have to run a pretty hefty ramp package in order to compensate for that. So, let's have the 4 mana rocks of Ichor Elixir, Sisay's Ring, Hedron Archive, and Golem's Eye in order to speed our deck up a lot. They're not the only things that produce 2 mana in our deck. We're also running a Worn Power Stone, but it does it at a cost of 3 mana. The safest mana we possibly can have is mana that comes out of our deck as basic lands, so let's add in Solemn Simulacrum and Wayfarer's Bauble. Then we need some 2 mana rocks, and Mind Stone, Charcoal Diamond, Fractured Power Stone, and Fire Diamond all will do this job very, very nicely, and we'll round it off with an Honored Heirloom so that we can get rid of things in graveyards before our opponents can use them, and then we can worry about stealing the other cards. And then for mana, we're going to be running 9 mountains and 11 swamps with a lot of dual lands. We've obviously got some tapped ones because we just have to at this budget. Rakdos Cranarium and Temple of Malice come into play tapped, but Temple of Malice does allow us to scry early on in the game, and the Rakdos Cranarium can fix up bad hands, and Canyon Slow can be cycled away if we happen to overdraw on lands. It's also searchable, so as you're upgrading your deck, this can still be yanked out with things like fetch lands, so it's still a pretty good card even as you are upgrading. After that, for our untapped lands, we're running Foreboding Ruins, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Shadowblood Ridge, Smoldering Marsh, Command Tower, Dragon Skull Summit, and a Tainted Peak, which I hope you never wake up with. And then for fetching lands, to make sure that we always have the lands we need, Shire Terrace, Terramorphic Expanse, Ash Barrens, Evolving Wilds, Promising Vein, and Escape Tunnel, with a Myriad Landscape to top it all off, because the landscape can actually be used as a pretty cheeky ramp piece. Let's also add in a Pit of Offerings to make sure that we can get rid of problematic cards in graveyards if we do not need them immediately for Kefka, and then a Barrenmoor and a Forgotten Cave in case we mana flood and we need to be able to cycle some lands out of our hand to draw some better cardboard. And that does it for our deck. 52 sources of mana and a lot of sources of grief for our opponents. This should be exactly what we need to keep ahead of our game. But None of that means anything if you don't know how to play the deck, so let's see how it plays out. Opening things up, we've got a ramp piece and a Cursed Marauder, a Temple, a Sepulchre Primordial. I'm actually really happy about this opening hand, so let's go ahead and see what happens. Draw our first card, let's play the Temple of Malice, look at the top card of our deck, see that it's a mountain that we don't really need, and, well, yeah, we're gonna toss that. Yeah, we're tossing that. That's going to go away. And then we're going to move into the next turn. Canyon Slow comes out. Let's go ahead and make a choice here. So, scenario 1, our opponents are gonna try to do something cheeky and get our creatures out early. If they do that, we're gonna use a Cursed Marauder to slow them down. Otherwise, we are gonna use Evolving Wilds, go ahead and crack it, and yank a mountain out of our library. That way, we have access to it, and we're just not gonna worry about doing stuff on this turn. Move into turn 3. Let's go ahead and play the Canyon Slow. Tap 2, play the Accursed Marauder, make everybody sack a creature, and that will be that. Moving into the next turn, let's go ahead and play our Swamp, and we want access to some cardboard, but I don't know if we're really willing to commit to the Ichor Elixir or anything like that right now, so I think the move is actually going to be Chaos? Yeah, let's do Chaos. Throes of Chaos. Let's see what comes out of our deck. It's going to cascade into something that costs 3 or less. So we just have to keep going till we hit. There's a Fire Diamond. That gave us a little bit of ramp. Not really what I would have preferred out of that, but you can't win them all. Moving into turn 5, we have a mountain here, and we don't have a major play, so let's pay 1, 2, 3, 4. Play the Ichor Elixir, pay 3, get the Worn Power Stone out, and go ahead and play that mountain. Then we'll move into turn 6. Our opponents likely have plenty of cards on their board at this point. We need to slow them down. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana available. And with that 10 mana, we can cast a Deathbringer Regent, or we can use this Anzrag's Rampage. I think our opponents have creatures out at this stage, so let's go ahead and get that Deathbringer Regent on the board. Boom, the entire board is blown up, and now Sepulchre Primordial will be able to do its thing. Moving into the next turn, we have Tainted Peak, and I'm going to go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's go ahead and get Kefka Palazzo himself on the battlefield. And you know what? I want some chaos. Let's discard this Pit of Offerings out of our hand to cast that Throes of Chaos again and gamble on what our deck can give us in the 3 mana variety. Siphon Mine's 4, so let's keep going. Read the Bones. That ain't bad at all. I'm actually okay with that. That lets us scry 2, see that we don't need either of these cards. We can throw these to the bottom and draw 2 fresh cards instead. And it's 2 lands, which isn't the best thing in the world, but it doesn't hurt us either. So, now we get to cast 3 spells, 2 to 3 spells, from our opponent's graveyards. Boom, we get all those things. I have no idea what they are. We can't really plan on what they are. So let's move into the next turn, play a Shadowblood Ridge, and we know we've blown up a lot of creatures from our opponents, so let's go ahead and start thieving those away from them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... and we need it to be... Yeah, no, this is fine. And then that's going to get Sepulchre Primordial out, which is going to revive a creature from each of our opponent's graveyards. Then we're going to pay 1, 2, 3, 4, discard this mountain out of our hand, and we're going to cast the Throes of Chaos again and get a Collector's Vault out of the deal. So this is basically what we're going to be doing. The Throes of Chaos is here to make sure that despite the fact that our deck has 40 lands, we never actually feel like we're pigeonholed by that. We can't really mana flood anymore because every time that we would be mana flooded, we just start discarding the lands away to chaos into whatever our deck can pull up. We have currently, at this moment, stolen 6 cards from our opponents. We've blown up a lot of cards from them, and if we keep going, we get to do silly things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's Anzrag's Rampage. Let's blow up all the artifacts our opponents have, and it's very likely that they each have at least 2 or 3 out, so we get to look at the top 9 cards of our deck and summon a creature for free from those cards, and then it goes into our hand afterwards. If I'm being honest, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? I mean, I'm going to take the Aura Phoenix and put that on the board because playing that again later is going to be funny as hell. And with Throes of Chaos, we get to just keep using the Aura Phoenix. And then we get to do 1, 2, 3, 4, discard the Exotic Orchard, use the Throes of Chaos to see what it gives us for 3 mana. Hedron Archive is not one. Burglar Rat. Perfect. We get Burglar Rat. That comes out onto the board. Our opponents lose a card in their hands, another card that Kefka is going to be able to utilize. And now we just kind of start beating our opponents down. And as we end the turn, the Aura Phoenix goes into our hand. And we're just kind of happy with that. As we move through the game, we can do, here's Aura Phoenix. Let's Cascade until we get something that costs 5 or less. That gets Seize the Spoils. And then that immediately allows us to just go and do more. Then we can then do Throes of Chaos. We can keep digging to get random cards out of our deck. And the one piece of information that is not being shown to you here is how many cards we've stolen out of our opponent's graveyards. While we ourselves are in a very good and powerful position, we've stolen a lot of cards from our opponent's graves this entire time. And we've got a Rankle Master of Pranks, so we can start making everybody lose cards throughout this game if we want. We're in a very strong position, but what would we do if we had just a little more money to sink into this deck? Obviously, for sinking a bit more money into this deck, then Unexpected Windfall, the brother of Big Score, can definitely make its way in. We'll have more ways to generate treasures to make it easier to summon our really expensive commander. Also, we can start getting rid of some of the basic lands in the deck and replacing them with MDSCs, which just do the job of lands, but better. Let's also add in a Strionic Resonator to double up on Kefka's ability. Let's add Espers to Magicite so we can cast, or just get even more cards out of our opponent's graveyards. Let's put a Withering Torment in here to give us more access to enchantment removal. A Lord of Pain to back up Karavek. It does the Karavek job, but even more, because it works when we cast cards. Let's add in Breach the Multiverse to steal cards from all of our opponent's graveyards. Let's have a Fevered Suspicion, which will allow us to steal even more cards from our opponent's graveyards. Card is nutty. Then let's add in a Black Market Connection so that we can go through our graveyard, or go through our deck even better, making us get tokens to block with, treasures to cast spells. Drawing cards with this card is fantastic. Honestly, Black Market Connections does a lot, and it actually lets us lean into the thematic nature of the deck as well, because we don't have a way to regain that life. So we get to cosplay as the insane villain without a plan. The type of villain that wants to take over everything, reshape the world in their image, but doesn't really quite understand what it means to have a world reshaped under them with no stable foundation. And that does it for the deck. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I had a blast making this, and it was a fun challenge from a friend. I may be doing a full power version of this deck later as well, so keep an eye out for that if you like. I think the Kefka decks are really probably my favorite thing that's come out of the Final Fantasy set, so I am happy about that. I just wish that the set wasn't so freaking expensive. Wizards. Anyway, subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you very much for checking out my channel. Please check the description for not only the sponsor of this video, Mana Pool, if you want to pick up this deck, but also for the links to this deck on Moxfield so you can see everything that is in here. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and as always, insert end of video tagline here. Behold my Nevin Rolls disc. It will annihilate everything you love. And I get to watch. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Blitzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Limor Pinku, Love Bunny Games, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Aurora, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.